Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece. Episode 219, and then we jump over a bunch of them, and we hit 225 and 226. In these episodes, every time I thought we were done with the Foxy Pirates, we actually weren't done with the Foxy Pirates. And you know what, guys? I am glad. Foxy Pirates, officially my favorite pirate crew of the show so far. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Florian for commissioning this episode. So this just is so delightful. The Afro wig still being here notwithstanding. I've said my piece on that, and I'm just going to leave that there. Every time that it turned out Foxy was still going to be part of the story, I was just so relieved. I love this guy. I absolutely love this fucking weirdo. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's his lack of pride in certain places and then the complete overabundance of pride in other places. I don't know if it's that he keeps a collection of masks around so that he can pretend to be other people, because evidently certain dodo birds do fall for that. I don't know if it's just the concept of the Davy Bat Games and the fact that he has an entire crew dedicated to just this traveling carnival situation. I don't know if it's his weird voice. It could be that. But overall, he is my favorite. And I think Mr. 2 has previously, up to now, kind of been my favorite, and he wound up being a friend, really, by the end. So I'm still counting him as a villain, but I don't know if he's actually dead. It seems like he's been implied to be dead, but the show doesn't really kill people, so I'm going to assume he's still out there somewhere. But when he went down, he did so trying to help our friends. And because of that, I have a closure with Mr. 2 that I don't have with Foxy. And because I don't have that closure yet, I'm putting Foxy at the top of the list above Mr. 2. If we do actually get closure, it will depend on how it happens and how that works. If we don't, and he just remains a sort of wild card that's out on the seas that they occasionally run into and have to deal with, I feel like he's gonna have to stay at the top of the list. We will see. Maybe I will get tired of him. I'm feeling like that's impossible right now, but maybe I would, and I would take it back. But at this point, him just sort of being a random, I like a lot better than Buggy the Clown being the guy who's still around and doing stuff. I do enjoy Buggy in his way, but his personality is kind of, it's a bit of a cliche. And Foxy is just so strange that I can't help but have more interest in not only him, but also his crew and the strange loyalty that he inspires in them. There's a lot of potential for all kinds of different directions here. So I'm just going on record. Oh, that's so funny. Gus is in the chat and he also mentions Buggy. Foxy is great. Him and Buggy are some of my favorites as far as other captains go. Closure about who, Mr. 2 or Foxy? Oh, I was saying we did get closure about Mr. 2 in terms of the fact that he was willing to give up his life in service to these people that he felt were his friends. Whether he's dead or not doesn't really matter. For me, if he was willing to do that, that means that he got a redemption arc and the story is pretty much closed for him. He may come back. I don't know. But where I'm sitting, Foxy doesn't have closure. No idea. As far as it seems in these 3 episodes, he has no interest whatsoever in teaming up with them. And I kind of thought he would, because it just seemed like the direction things were going in. And I wasn't upset about that at all. It would have been fine. It wouldn't have worked out, but it would have been fun to watch. But instead, what they're having him do is pretend to be like part of the group and then stab them in the back, or pretend to forgive and then not. And that is so much more fun. Like, it is. I feel like if Foxy were by himself, maybe he would be more willing to, like, try and make it work with this crew for a time. I don't feel like it would be permanent by any means, but, you know, for a time. I think, though, with his 2 little, like, dudes that he's got as his sidekicks, one of whom, like, appears to betray him by the end, he has too strong a compulsion to keep face. And there would be no end to it with them. We'll see where he winds up, though, because things don't go according to plan for him by the end of this all. So, let's see. Gus says, in the filler episodes that you skipped, there's even more Foxy if you're interested. I don't remember them being as good, but he is in one of the arcs. That's right. Thank you also for reminding me, Gus, because I did watch the other filler arc. I watched it last weekend, so at this point it's been a while. But it really was a pretty fun one. It was super drawn out also. It was the kind of thing that, like, I think could have been really, really fun if it was 3 or 4 episodes. But it was like 10, not that many, but, you know. And that has its own kind of problems. But overall, it was still a pretty fun one. And I was glad to, like, go back and watch it. There were a lot of really funny moments. And also just so much more of Sanji cooking, which you guys know. I really just kind of want more of that in all the episodes in general. Sanji being lovesick is super funny. But Sanji being a super competent chef who's, like, a little bit competitive about it, but also really just does love good food, it just speaks so closely to my heart. And he only really ever seems to, like, get to indulge in that in any real capacity in the filler episodes. They should let him do that more. They might not need straight up filler episodes if they just explored our guys' personalities a little bit more in each episode and let them, like, get up to their own antics. Anyway, okay, so let's start from the beginning here, because we are picking this up right after it looks like Luffy is gonna, like, keep fighting until he's killed, essentially. And Foxy is like, what the fuck is your deal, man? Keep standing up. Why don't you just stay down and put us all out of our misery? And the announcer is eating this up. He loves it. He's just screaming about how he's barely standing up, he's out of breath, he's exhausted, but he's doing this all for his friends. I'm so teary-eyed I can't even see straight. This announcer truly is the MVP of all of this. The only thing that I'm bummed about is that when Foxy shows up again later, the announcer is not in and amongst his sidekicks, because if this guy were always around, that would make it even, like, just having somebody kind of commentating in an ordinary circumstance is always a bit of a funny gag. And this dude, out of proportion with the, like, actual events, with the inflections in his voice, I feel like that would just be a gift that would keep on giving. I would really enjoy that. So anyway, he is so touched by Luffy's display of strength here that he gets the crowd really riled up and gets all of them saying, like, cheering for Luffy, sympathetic to him, impressed with him. And Foxy hears them all, like, rooting for Luffy, and he has to turn to them and say, how can you be cheering for the enemy, guys? What are you even doing? I really wanted them to kind of not care and keep cheering for Luffy anyway, but it made a lot more sense that they listened to him. So he uses a slow beam on Luffy, and then he shoots a cannonball at him. And then he jumps onto the cannonball with a sort of like, it resembles the mode of transportation used by the Green Goblin in the Spider-Man franchise. Except it looks like it's made of wood. And I guess the bit is supposed to be Luffy is slowed down. So he slows down the cannonball also. That gives him time to put his little weird skateboard on top of the cannonball, which shall continue to carry him. And then he is going to attack Luffy from the back of this weird skateboard thing. So Luffy, who is slowed down, has to just sort of sit and watch while Foxy comes toward him on this thing. And Luffy manages to just barely get out of the way. And then Foxy belts him in the face and sends him flying. I was kind of thinking that there would be more to this than just that it's like a flyer. It does wind up hitting Luffy at the end, and it's like a regular cannonball at that point once he like lets go of it and stops using it for his little thing. But the fact that it does just kind of seem like a piece of wood works really well. And I was pleasantly surprised at the weird simplicity of this whole concept, to be honest. So yeah, he attacks Luffy, and there's like a huge cloud of smoke, and I'm thinking, you just damaged your own ship, guy. What are you even doing? But really, I think he's just used to winning a lot quicker. And at this point, he's willing to take some hits in order to make sure Luffy is down, because there is just no guarantee at this point. So he does the cannon thing, and then Luffy is still standing. And again, everybody is just so excited about this. And Foxy is genuinely starting to get kind of freaked out. There are a couple of moments where Luffy like topples again, and it kind of starts to feel like, all right, he's taken about as much as he can. It's not going to happen. But then comes the final moment in which we do get the thing that I was like expecting. He and Foxy engage in hand to hand. Foxy is taking the worst of it. And he decides to use his slow beam. And when he sends it shooting at Luffy, it suddenly bounces back on him and freezes him in place. And it turns out that Luffy has a piece of mirror that was like inside his afro that he held onto in order to redirect the beam. And now he's got this guy completely slowed down. And seeing him slowly opening his mouth trying to say, "Damn you," was so funny to me. I don't know. We have seen everybody else in slow-mo, but none of them have like the incredibly exaggerated features that Foxy does. And so him moving really, really slowly is particularly amusing. So this is when Luffy winds up and he comes at him with that like attack where he's punching him repeatedly, like several times a second. This one is, first it's flail. And yeah, he's swinging back, and that's right. Because I'm thinking that he used like the machine gun, but he didn't. A couple of really big hits. And once time regains its spot, Foxy goes flying off the ship. And he loses just because he's out of bounds. And I really kind of liked that this was the thing. I was thinking it was going to be that he goes down, but the out of bounds rule being the way he gets defeated makes a lot more sense. And it's also kind of like a nice, it almost feels like he won because of fine print. And that isn't something that I would really expect. So I thought that this was a good bit. And I do really enjoy all of them knowing how long it will take for the beam to wear off, and they start to chant from the audience how much time there is left. And as this is happening, we're seeing him slowly bend and move with the punches that he received like a minute earlier. And then finally, the timer goes off and he goes flying. And yeah, what happens is, of course, that Luffy winds up with a crew of 497 new people. But he doesn't want that. So he's just sort of like, what do I even do with all of these folks? And what he does is make sure to take them under his command, but then give them the command that they are to go off and do whatever they wish. And they are separate from Foxy and Porsche and Hamburg. So the crew of 497 guys all decide, well, obviously we're taking the Sexy Foxy, which is the name of their ship, which is never not funny. That is truly such a weirdly redundant... It's really funny. But the crew is just like, yeah, of course we are. There's almost 500 of us. Where else are we going to go? Of course we're taking the ship. And Foxy's like, that is my ship. And they're like, the fuck it is. You're going to have to figure something else, bro, because you're not part of our crew anymore and you don't get the ship. And Foxy is so horrified. This clearly never occurred to him. Also, Luffy took his flag and makes him a new flag, which is truly awful. And that is the source of some of his like aggression later on, is just, I can't keep sailing under this banner. That is like, it's too humiliating. We have to do something about it. What's so funny about this? So help me out here, guys, about exactly how this worked. Because what we wind up seeing a little later is that Luffy took the banner and he handed it over to old Stilts guy, right? But I don't recall what that does. It feels like I missed something here, and maybe I missed like what his purpose was in giving it to him. I don't know. But this was such a weird, the Stilts guy is such a kind of pointless plot thread that I have to be honest, I kind of like didn't really pay that much attention to him in general, because he didn't interest me very much. Being the only native of this island that we have met, and everybody else is apparently like somewhere else, it was not all of like, we meet him, we have like a short interaction with him, and then the Foxy Pirates show up and completely steal the show, literally and figuratively. So everything to do with this dude felt very secondary, if that. Let's see. Gus says, I think it's actually triple take on one big hit. It's hard to tell, though. I'm missing what you're saying. I'm sorry, Gus. When I don't read these exactly when somebody types them, sometimes the context is gone and I don't know what you mean. But anyway, so what's funny to me is the concept that like a guy like Foxy is totally willing to cheat in so many respects, but he will abide by the outcome of the game as decided by like the audience or the ref or whoever, except that he won't, and he will come after you to make it like more personal, but he does that in order to not have to follow the rule that he frankly didn't have to follow to begin with. Like, in the end of these 3 episodes, Foxy is able to get his entire crew and ship back. And he could just make another flag and keep flying under the Foxy Pirates. And I really don't think Luffy would ever even notice or care. But he has this weird fixation on following some of the rules. So it makes it like he can't just completely fly in the face of tradition. He can only sort of fly in the face of tradition by going after this kid in a completely unrelated situation way after the fact. Which, honestly, the internal logic of that is non-existent, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't like make sense, because this is just how people actually are. You know, a lot of us are like this, where we're like, I would tolerate a certain kind of cheating in this or that scenario, but it has to be like a particular specific scenario. And there comes a point where you just kind of have to accept how things are after that, you know, and there's all kinds of examples, but I won't get into that. It's just the idea of holding these two conflicting sort of ideologies in your head, where you have to hold something sacred, but not too sacred, that I found actually pretty funny and like revealing. So anyway, the Foxy Pirates take the ship, and Foxy is sent off on a, like, dinghy isn't quite a fair word, but it's a pretty small ship that barely fits him portion Hamburg. And then they go and talk to the stilts guy, who is sitting with his little horse, Shelly. And he says something about how he's never going to get up on stilts ever again. And we will follow the village and we'll get reunited together with them, no matter how long it takes. And then Luffy and crew come walking up. All right, I'm going to read. Let's see. I went and kicked their butts. And he holds the flag out. This dude is preoccupied with how hurt Luffy is. But I was like, he's smiling ear to ear, guy. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And I guess it's just maybe justice for the way that, like, Foxy tried to take down Shelly? Is that it? I don't know. There's not really, like, a good explanation for this to me. I don't know. Let's see. Gus says, I think he's just doing it because it all started with Foxy shooting, capturing Shelly, and Luffy kind of got into the whole game thing because he was mad about that. Okay, the context for the previous comment was the final blow that Luffy lands. He follows the rules of the Davy back fight. Part of the rules for the games themselves is that there aren't really any rules except for ones that are made up for specific games and cheating is allowed. But the overall rules of the fight are the ones surrounding taking crewmates and Jolly Rogers. Yeah, so it's like Luffy tried to get out of doing some of these things, and this guy yelled at him that he wasn't allowed to just not do it, but then is going to come after Luffy because he did it. Guy, you could just kind of accept that he's not going to do it, and that would just, we wouldn't have to go through this. But no, you've got to make everything a whole thing. So at this point, all of a sudden, there are these weird rumbles, and we see Stilts Guy's entire house basically go up in, not smoke, go up in dust, essentially. And it looks for a second like there's a giant mole that's doing the digging here. But it turns out that he is accompanied by a friend. He says, I'm the champion. And when they say champion of what? He says, I'm the world champion of hole digging. He's got a belt and everything, guys. What? So this works out because it turns out he's related to Stiltsman, and he has dug holes from each of the pieces of land like tunnels. So they can go and reunite with the rest of their clan pretty easily now. It just hadn't occurred to him to do that. And the fact that they're like instead of just having them like stumble on a cave or something that like maybe comes out somewhere, because honestly, an old man, if there was a cave on this like small island, he probably would know about it already, right? But this being like a small relative of his who used to dig, and then he grew up to become like the champion digger, and he has made new tunnels between all of the little islands. It's so absurd, and it just does work really well. It's stupid, and it's fine. I just can't be mad about it. Just the whole, I'm the champion hole digger. I'm challenging my own record as we speak. And I love when Luffy is like, how can you even say that when you just ruined this guy's house? And the kid is like, wait, what? And they call him Old Stilts Guy. And the kid doesn't say, oh my God, I fucked somebody's house up. He says, Old Stilts Guy. Like, he knows what that means. He immediately is thinking, that rings a bell. And then we get to see this flashback. So they have just said, how could you destroy this guy's house? Just Old Stilts Guy's house. Guy says, Old Stilts Guy. And then we get a zoom in on Stilt Guy's face. And he is grinning from ear to ear, and his eyes are filling with tears. And I was so confused, y'all. I wasn't getting it that he like knew this kid. I was straight up like, is that supposed to be a grimace and it looks too much like a smile? This is making me really uncomfortable. But no, I just wasn't picking up on like what was happening here. So his weird crying smile just came across extremely creepy. And they look at each other and he says, could it be? Are you? And he says, it's me. And they reunite, and it's very adorable. So this reunion, while I don't really care that much about Stilts Guy, it's perfectly adequate. Let's go with it. No problem. So that's 219. And then I'm going to probably just kind of talk about 225 and 226 like as if it were one episode, because it does sort of feel like that. So when we pick things up, we are with the Marines. It's a vice admiral who is, I think that they were looking for something. He says, he's not around, doesn't cut it. Where the hell did he go? Since his bicycle is gone, he probably went to sea. And this guy says, contact the 5 elders immediately. And we see a guy who is bicycling on the water, I think, because we see a fish jump out. But I don't remember in that big meeting that we saw any guy who was on a bicycle, unless it maybe the mime sort of themed dude. Did he have a bicycle? Honestly, I would think if we were going to have him have like any sort of wheeled vehicle, it would be a unicycle, but I don't know what tropes we're working with for this, you know? And then we go inside and we have the elders, and they say, that man again, he probably just went to do some sightseeing. And they're talking about how he does not take his position very seriously. He's wandering around. We can't have that. And we then see him again on the ocean, and Grand Admiral Akoji? I don't remember how they said it out loud. I'm reading it off of the subtitle here. I don't know what to make of the fact that this guy can bicycle on water. Is that a devil fruit power? What would that be? Like about being light? Well, no. Well, I was going to say no because the bike would sink. But maybe anything like he touches becomes just as light. And so he can float on water or something. the way that devil fruit powers work just sort of is malleable, right? Gus says, oh, Aokiji. Aokiji. Okay, cool. Thank you, Gus. And then we don't get anything more about this like thing with the Marines for the remaining 2 episodes. So it's just a little bit of a hint dropped here, and I guess it's going to percolate in the background for a little while. But at the moment, doesn't really seem to be important to the main story. So I love this. We have our friends who, you know, I hadn't watched the filler episodes. I jumped right over them and then started this one. So the fact that we immediately begin with Luffy on the open sea, passing Foxy and Porch and Hamburg, and he is just like right there and suffering terribly because it's a stormy evening and they are not on a big ship. I wasn't expecting to just see Fox again this fast, and I was so delighted. And he is like, don't look at us while we're like this. Luffy says something about how like, hey, it's pretty dangerous out here. Do you want to get on our ship? And he says, we haven't fallen so low that we need to accept help from our enemy. But then when Luffy says, okay, see you later, he's like, no, wait, we'll take your help if you insist on it. And I really like when his 2 crewmates are essentially looking at him like, are you fucking crazy that you would turn down help? We are going to die. Because this is Luffy's energy. And I feel like this might be the first time that we have seen a captain have the same, like, draw for people that feels almost inexplicable, that they're, like, loyal to him, but also not really seem to consider what's best for his crew in a real way. So, as they're going by, Luffy tries to throw them a rope. He grabs onto Luffy's arm anyway, and Luffy is like, I meant the rope, not my arm. And I was kind of like, honestly, how can you tell? Your arm gets so like squiggly and skinny, Luffy. And as they get yanked onto his ship, theirs gets broken into a million pieces. So then we go inside, and Sanji is making a healing broth for all of them. And I really love the fact that he puts this down in front of Foxy's face, who is being offered shelter and food by an enemy who he has tried to screw over multiple times. And he has the audacity to be like, this isn't soup, there's nothing in it. I cannot get enough of characters who haven't got any shame at all. It's like a combination of secondhand embarrassment, but also like a grudging admiration. They're just like, man, I kind of wish I could have that energy a little bit more often, but I'm always trying to like make people feel better, and you know, but like the kind of my issue here is that my instinct is to kind of agree with him too. If somebody put like a clear broth in front of me, I feel like I would initially go, really? But depending on the broth, sometimes it's astonishing the kinds of flavors that can be packed into something that looks like it's just barely has seasoning in it or anything. So I like to imagine, because Sanji is such an amazing cook, that this broth is the kind of thing that's like seafood has been simmering in it all day, you know? And it's probably the bits that you don't use, like we saw in the filler episode series before this, where he's like, how can you be so wasteful? And they have all of these like lobster tails and fish heads and stuff. And he's like, boil these guys. What is wrong with you? This is everything, like where the flavor is. I'm going to imagine that's what this is. So it's like really pungent and probably has tons of vitamins in it. But anyway, so he says, I think this might be finally the end of Silver Foxy. It might have been better if I had let fate take its course and given myself to the sea. And I love Nami being like, do you think he's faking it? To Usopp, and Usopp being like, in my expert opinion, yes. That is not what it says in the subtitle, but I love that the assertion sounds like here, I am the expert at lying. I am always lying. And I will be able to tell you when somebody else is lying. Expert liar. In my expert lying opinion, that man is lying. So, yeah, at this point, Luffy is like, all right, well, I mean, you can stay here on our ship because you don't have anywhere else to go. So, like, what are you supposed to even do? And obviously, Foxy just doesn't want anything to do with accepting this help. But also, there is the possibility that he can get one over on Luffy later. And from his attitude here, I had a suspicion that he wasn't just going to become their friend. So we get this amazing running joke that I have really grown to enjoy, even though it's like uncomfortable, of Porch looking for Chopper all the time. She still sees him as her pet. So when she gets some dinner, she says that she's going to go bring it to him and share it with him. And when she tries to find him, he puts a little candle on the end of one of his antlers and hides so that he just looks like a weird, like, head mounted on a wall with a candle on it, which I've never seen a stag's head with like big antlers where the antlers were turned into candle holders, but I have to assume that's a thing because that's just a really good idea. And I'm just imagining, there's a friend that Owen has whose parents were really big into hunting. And we went over their house one day and they have an elk's head on one wall. And I am not exaggerating. From the bottom to the top tips of the antlers, it is about 5.5 feet at least. Beyond belief. If they did not actually have that head in that room, I would never have believed it. I just wouldn't believe it. It just doesn't look possible. And it takes up so much room in this little living room. Like, it's not a larger than average living room. And this head is about the size of like an entertainment center. And if they turned it into a cool candelabra, I feel like that would be a much better use of the space than it just being antlers out there. You know, I'm not big on having stuffed animals. Well, you know the kind I mean. As decoration anyway. I've never been big into hunting. It doesn't like gross me out exactly. I just find it kind of creepy. But something that's this obtrusive, I have such mixed feelings because it takes up way too much room and I'm not into it. But also, if you took down an animal that size, there is no way that you don't want to have proof. Because, like I said, I wouldn't believe it if they didn't have that. So I have some sympathy as well. So yeah, anyway, I found this joke too to be really good. And it's like a thing that keeps coming up is her chasing Chopper and him having to find ways that are like he has to hide or just generally sort of stay out of her way as much as he can. And it's uncomfortable and weird, but also I like it in the idea of an Angelica in Rugrats, who was, I don't know how many of you actually even watched Rugrats, but she was somebody who could be a little bit too aggressive with her pets. So at this point, things aren't going super well with them joining our crew. And when the Mary spots the sexy Foxy out there sailing around, everybody gets very excited for the idea that they're going to finally leave. But when Foxy is reunited with his people, at first it's all like a happy reunion. Everybody is very tearful. I missed you so much, boss. And he says that you guys can all be part of the Foxy Pirates again. And the guys just begin crying. And he says, what's the matter? And all of a sudden, here comes this dude, the head of the Horned Frog Pirates, I think is the name of theirs. And Fanged Frog. That's what it is. And apparently this is the crew, and I didn't remember this at all. This is the crew that he screwed over and like took their ship and crew earlier. So he is getting his revenge, but also the crew doesn't like him. And I found this really funny because the crew tends to, when we have seen the possibility on the horizon that somebody from Foxy crew is going to get taken and made to serve with the straw hats. I kept wanting to say sun hats. They have all seemed to be kind of stoic about it and be like, I'm sure I'll have a good time. They have a decent attitude, but apparently this guy either hasn't been what they wanted, or they just miss Foxy so much that when he actually shows up, they can't help but be like, of course we would rather be with you, buddy. And he says, and like, cause Foxy is saying, all right, fine, I guess we're going to take off. And this guy says, well, I have some business with you. These guys still won't take off their masks. And I need some help because they aren't really accepting their position with the fanged frogs. And there comes this moment. I feel like so often Usopp will say in the dialogue, almost verbatim what I am thinking. Foxy looks over his shoulder at him and says, a captain has to earn the respect of his crew members. It isn't just given. And I was like, huh, okay, Foxy, that was kind of badass. Like, where'd that come from? And then we go up to Usopp, who says, wow, is it just me, or is he kind of cool right now? And it's like, again, this is the stuff that I feel like is really important about watching it with the subtitles versus the dub. The subtitles just don't get across that energy of that moment. When I'm looking at it and seeing the way that they subbed it, I'm sure it's like probably literally more accurate, but it isn't getting across the vibe of what's supposed to be happening there to me. All he says, he doesn't say you need to earn their respect. It isn't just given, which I think is like a more complex statement. The sub just says they probably don't like their new captain, which is really kind of a limp response. It just, that's really, and then when Usopp responds, all he says is, boss is kind of cool. That's it. And neither of those really does anything. Like, they just don't feel like there's any real emotion there or a judgment call or like nothing that speaks to what we're supposed to be feeling as an audience, which is a bit of smugness, but also like maybe there's a reason that Foxy is the captain everybody loves, and Usopp being impressed in this moment because of that one particular response instead of just saying, oh, he's kind of cool. There's just a lot about the way the dub is done, and this isn't the only place, but it's like a really good example because of how different the sentences are, that while I understand watching it subtitled as being like a purist experience, I don't agree with it, because to me there is a joke intended here, and if the sub isn't getting the joke across really, and I don't think it is, but the dub really does. I feel like the dub is actually a better representation of what the experience is supposed to be. Does that make sense? So, all this to say, I just think that dubs have their place. And as somebody who is new to watching anime and having to choose between subs and dubs, I'm 100% certain that it depends on the dub, because you guys know that I watched some of those 4Kids ones and that shit was so bad. It's not going to be like I'm going to say I always prefer the dubs, but I don't necessarily think you can just say the subs are closer to the original and have that be an across the board statement. I don't think that's necessarily true. There's the whole thing with this show is that it's silly in a very particular way. And the silliness just goes right out of certain moments if it feels flat with that line delivery like it does. So anyway, what we have then is Foxy deciding that he is going to like go up against this dude in order to prove that he is the more worthy captain. And this dude is like, if they see you get beaten up, they'll probably come to their senses. And I couldn't help but laugh because, like, you think that they love this guy and they're not taking their masks off because they like him so much. You think that beating the shit out of him is going to help your cause? Why? But anyway, he is more than willing to take this on. He says, all right, yeah, let's do this. He is going to give this ship and my subordinates back to me. And he pulls a gun, and I thought, is he just going to shoot this guy? Is this going to be like an Indiana Jones where he was about to have a big fight, but he just pulls a gun out and shoots the man? But instead, he fires it into the air like it's a starting pistol. And I was like, oh, okay, that was a lot of drama. So I'm going to have to speed this up. I just realized how little time I have left. Long story short, he uses the slow beam. All of his guys gather around and use these reflective sides of their swords to send the slow beam back at him. And he gets gripped up. He's so mad about it. I just find that so funny. And this guy's like, I already know your trick, so I don't know why you even thought that that was going to work for you. But he has Foxy surrounded, and he also gets porched by the throat and has like a knife to her throat and is essentially going, oh yeah, no, this isn't going to go the way that you want, which Luffy finds offensive. Basically, he is like, this man invited you to, you know, give him his ship back that belongs to him, and all of his men want to follow him again. You were the one who decided to turn it into this entire thing, and now you've got a knife to his people's throat. That's gross. So he's pretty much on the side of Foxy at this point. And it's interesting because he keeps sort of trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. And Foxy just keeps fucking with him, and he isn't learning. I don't know. I kind of like that. I don't feel like Luffy learning is going to happen. It's just not. He is who he is, I suppose. Meanwhile, I love Robin is like hiding with Chopper. Chopper's first, he hides in like a barrel at one point. They're chilling in one of the cabins playing a board game while all this is going on. And a dude on the deck tries to run in and help Foxy. And this fanged frog guy uses a whip, and it looks like from the animation, it's supposed to have nailed this dude in the nuts as he's like running to help Foxy. And Foxy gets the ever-loving shit kicked out of him. He goes flying and he's clearly sort of trying to martyr himself in a way. And finally, Luffy is like, all right, I'll fight you. We're doing this. And Foxy then is like encouraging this captain to fight Luffy by saying, if you beat him, even though he has a big bounty, and I understand that being worrisome, they also have a ton of gold on their ship. So you may want to consider that when you're wondering whether to take this deal or not. And apparently none of the crew had realized that Foxy and Co. had spotted all of that gold, but it doesn't seem like they had the door locked, or it might have been a window or something. It was not secure enough, suffice to say. So yeah, the Foxy people all know that they have gold, and this is an additional motivation. And at first, somebody tries to just like threaten them and make them give it up, because granted, there are 500 people here on one side, and then there's like the 6 people in the Straw Hats crew. And they're thinking, oh yeah, let's just use a show of force and go up against them. But the first dude who tries gets intercepted, let's say, by Zoro. And that does not go well for him. And then when the captain tries to send the rest of the guys, they just put their hands over their ears and say, sorry, we weren't listening. And refuse to obey his orders. And I have to assume that this is a combination situation of the fact that he fucked Foxy up, which they don't like. And they also don't like him. And also they just watched Zoro lay a man out with no effort. And they're like, we are not interested in catching any of that smoke. We're good. And Luffy, meanwhile, is really going after him, chasing him. He's got the friggin' afro on yet again. We won't talk about it. But he's chasing that guy while Zoro and Sanji once again get into it. There's a guy that was trying to fight against Zoro. Zoro was going to be able to catch the blade, but Sanji came up behind him and like kicked him in such a manner that Zoro, his head gets shoved under the butt of the blade, and he gets a huge like lump on his head. And then later, when this guy tries to restart the fight, Sanji kicks the back of the man's head, so when Zoro tries to clap and catch the blade again, he instead catches and claps that man's face. Which leads Zoro to being like, oh, what's with this guy? Get out of the way. And he just chucks him off the ship because he's like, no, I want to finish having my fight with this guy. My friend, allegedly. So, yeah. Then there's the dude who tricks Usopp, and one of the best jokes ever. Usopp has all this red on his hand, and the guy is like, I'm a doctor, let me see. And Usopp says, I hate doctors, punches him, and then goes, oh, that was just my ketchup star. This is so dumb, you guys. Oh my God. It's so stupid. It made me laugh so hard, though. It really, truly did. And again, he's like, oh no, you really hurt me. And Sanji comes forward like, oh, I'm sorry, man. And then the guy turns out to be fine and chucks him. It's a real everybody fighting everybody all over the place kind of free for all. It ends with our team winning. Luffy and Foxy are face to face, and Foxy is like, let me just tell you something. And Luffy says, that's okay. You don't got to thank me. And then he holds his hand up and is like, no, that's not what I wanted to tell you. And he does slow beam. And the whole crew is like, what the fuck, man? We just helped you. Why would you do this? Meanwhile, his entire crew is absolutely delighted with this turn of events, which I didn't entirely buy. I really feel like they wouldn't have loved this. They would get on board eventually, but at the moment, I feel like they wouldn't like it. Nevertheless, they are standing right on top of like a trapdoor. So after he uses the slow beam on them, the trapdoor opens and they just fall inside. And we get a pretty like creepy close-up of his face that was drawn in such a way it had much more jagged lines to it and everything. And it was the first time that he has looked actually scary. His looks are the type that could be really scary, but because he's drawn so goofy most of the time, it never really occurred to me how actually kind of outright terrifying he is. So getting into this next episode, our friends are all locked up, and then Sanji is like, I think we could probably bust out of here pretty easy, actually, if we just take one of these walls out. And he kicks the wall out, and in comes, I can't believe this, it's Foxy, who is again donning like the disguise of a woman, and I think he's got Portia's hat on, and he says, "Choppy, where are you hiding? You better come out or I'll have to punish you." And it's said in this way that feels deeply sexual to me, and I hated it so much. And Chopper, who is somewhere else entirely, starts shaking and sweating. And I have to assume it's that he can actually hear this, but it's never explicitly said because Robin sure doesn't hear it. So there was a part of me that was like, is this almost a sixth sense kind of thing that he has this terrible feeling all of a sudden? But this moment is just so weird. And I thought the joke was like actually initially just, oh, we caught him cross-dressing. Isn't that hilarious? Because his behavior here doesn't feel like somebody who's trying to pretend to be somebody else exactly. But then Luffy gets fooled and thinks that, oh yeah, you're Splithead's sister, aren't you? And everybody is just like, oh my God. And what happens here, it's basically like a repeat of Luffy getting fooled during the fight that they had back on the Long Island. But everybody here is actually getting to watch him fall for it and discussing amongst themselves that they don't know how to handle it. Nami says something like, should we say something to him? Like, this is pretty awkward. And I think it's Zoro who says, let's just see how this pans out, which I really enjoy that energy. When you watch somebody do something that you're like, this is truly beyond belief to me, I kind of just want to see what happens. Like, that's relatable to me. So again, he tries to attack and Zoro has to step in and save him and be like, will you look at his face, Luffy? This is not a woman. And finally, Luffy realizes. Then we go to them having to like split up. And when Nami and Usopp are together, there's this weird sort of like open work floor that has all of these prisoners in it that they have to cross over in order to get to the other side. And we get this truly weird. So essentially, Nami initially is like, I'm just going to do it. Fuck him. I'm just going to do it. And she starts to, and then is like, oh God, I just can't. And Usopp is like, you know what? I have a really good idea. I will use this bright, like basically a flash bomb, essentially. And all these guys who have been stuck in darkness have probably got real sensitivity to light going on right now. And if we use that, they won't be able to see us for a minute and we can just sprint across, which is truly just a good plan. But they grab Usopp and they think he's Nami. And he yells for Nami and she just says, Usopp, hey, I appreciate your sacrifice. I'll always remember you. And these guys are like feeling Usopp up, talking about how he's smooth like a woman. Let me feel her too. And it's this really uncomfortable, like mass groping sexual assault thing. And I don't want to take it too seriously, but I do have to just say that. It's a weird little bit. Anyway, again, we have Chopper just kind of like having this moment and acting like he can hear, but then not telling Robin what's actually going on. And I'm running out of time. There was a lot more to talk about in these 3 episodes than I was expecting. But we have the 2 machines that show up. I love that, like, Luffy can't remember the name of the one and he calls it Gorilla Pants. And that is not correct. The other uses fire, and Nami conjures all of this rain, which manages to kind of counteract the whole thing. And I really enjoy when we cut outside onto the deck and he comes out of the like smoke. We have Foxy and his shoulders are down in a way that you would think he has his arms at or his hands on his hips, like he's in a power pose. But then the smoke clears and he says, "I lost." And his entire crew is like, "Wait, what?" And that was a very well done joke. And then we have Sanji and Zoro busting out of this other section. They just come straight through the wall. And Zoro has an unconscious Usopp thrown over his shoulder. And I was just like, "Oh, Usopp, you deserve better than this." So finally, of course, we've got Foxy being like, "Well, what are we going to do? You beat me again and I can't have this." And Luffy is like, "Just let them be part of your crew again. And we can just, put this back to how it was." And he says, for the Straw Hat's sake, you can all go free. And you can work for me again. And he's saying this to the fanged frog guy who had been part of his crew before defecting yet again. And the fanged frog man is crying with relief. And Nami is just like, how? He just hated him. What is going on? How does he have this kind of charisma? And we see Sanji just dance past and yelling like boss, like he got swept up in the moment. Sanji, sir, what is happening to you? And I love Nami grabs him and is just like, "You're not about to like fucking switch sides, are you?" And he's like, "Of course not, never." But of course, when we go back to Foxy after our crew has gone off separately, he is absolutely determined that he is going to get his revenge so that he doesn't have to keep flying under this ridiculous flag anymore. And he says, "I will not let you get away with this, Straw Hat." So our friends see an island. They have a little barbecue, unaware that they're being followed. There is this really amazing fake crab that he makes that his 2 henchmen are helping him steer, that he seems to think is very convincing. Any way you look at it, this is an ordinary crab. And of course, Luffy is the only one that is fooled by this. He engages in combat because he wants to eat the crab, while everybody else is just looking at Foxy like, "Are you serious? Do you think that this is going to work? Do you really?" So he completely like destroys this crab and undoes Foxy's plan yet again with like no real effort. And I enjoy a lot that Porch is like, "Hey man, as long as we're here, can we just get some of their barbecue? Because like I'm really hungry." And he starts to grandstand about how they're part of the Foxy Pirates and they should never take anything from an enemy. And Sanji just knocks him out of the way and has these 2 giant platters of food that he hands out. And that moment was so great. Just Foxy trying so hard to be like, I still have a shred of dignity. And it does not work out. Every time he has got to just stop trying because it makes it worse. I do like to Portia's trying to be like, hey, Sanji, you're pretty good at this cooking thing. What if you come work for us, actually? And Sanji does the whole, oh, you're tempting me. And in the background, Zoro is just like, you definitely should go with them. Yes, please do. That would be great. And when he doesn't, Zoro is like, are you sure you're not going to go? And he says, well, you may not care, but Nami and Robin deserve the best of everything, so I'm going to help provide it by cooking them amazing meals. So the episode ends with them walking further into the island. And at first they're in trees, and then they come out in this clearing. And Chopper is running towards this really high, what do you call it? It's like almost a plateau of rock, but it's not big enough to count as a plateau. It's weird. And he apparently thinks that this thing is a mushroom that he's going for, but it's somebody's head. And he knocks Chopper out of the way and stands up. And this is the guy that was on the bicycle, I think, based on his like white suit. And Robin recognizes him and freaks out a little bit. Really, it's the only time we've ever seen this kind of emotion. Even when she has found various like artifacts and stuff like that, it hasn't been like this. She is truly shook. And rightfully, when Usopp notices this, he says something like, anything that scares Robin really scares me. She literally like falls on her ass in shock. It's that kind of thing. I don't know if this is somebody that she used to work for or what, but the dude is basically acting like, hey, you're freaking out for no reason. It's not that big a deal. I'm not here on orders. I just decided to take a stroll. And Robin says he's a Marine and he's one of the people known as the world government's ultimate powerhouses. He is, I'm going to look again to see how Aokichi. Thank you, Gus, again. And that is the end of the episode. So let's see. Gus says, just to let you know, these 2 episodes are filler. They are the Foxy episodes that talked about earlier. I thought they would be skipped, but I guess not. Oh, no. I'm glad they weren't, though. But I will be watching the ones that were skipped anyway. Not sure when, but I will. Okay, I'm so over time, so I have to wrap up. But thank you again, everybody, for listening. Hope you're enjoying the content. And I'll see you again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.